here it is, part 3 of the 2011 Juke motor swap. Got everything put back together. Didn't have the time. I was really trying to get this one done, get it out. I wish I would have had a little bit more time so I could have shown you guys a little bit more detail as to how everything goes on. Only issue I've had is something squealing on the serpentine belt. Not sure if it's one of the accessories. It's definitely not the belt. Other than that, everything seemed to go together pretty good. You can see it. I'll try to show you some of the stuff you got to disconnect. Right there, if you can see it, that 14mm bolt right there for the exhaust. You've got 2 bolts there, and then 2 back here. 1 and 2 to disconnect and remove. This one actually dropped in pretty easily. Wasn't really a lot of headaches. As far as the subframe goes, it's really not all that difficult. Just 1 bolt there, 2, 3, and then you have 1, 2, and 3 others that need to come off on the back as well. This is just a bracket to help support everything, more structure than anything. And then see the axles, those are all back in, tie rods are in, lower ball joints are back in. Now here's a trick for you guys if you ever have trouble removing these lower ball joints on these Nissans, because they love to rust up. Even brand new, I struggle to pull these apart when I've had to replace transmissions or whatever else. Even on brand new ones with low miles, these ball joints can be a real headache. So what you want to do is sometimes you can get a pry bar in here and pry and pop that out once you have this bolt and nut removed. Other thing you can do is put a hammer or put a chisel in here and then beat it with a hammer to kind of spread that gap just a little bit, and then that'll help the ball joint drop out. You'll still have to pry on it to get it to fully pop out. These are real stiff on the Nissans. The other thing you can do is if you have an air hammer with a chisel, is stick that in there and air hammer it, and that'll help open that up a lot. It'll allow you to drop it out of there. Let's see, as far as the steering goes, all you need to do is disconnect the tie rods, 1 and 2. This does not have a power steering pump on the belt. It is driven on the steering column underneath the dash. It's an electric motor, which makes these real easy. So you got 2 tie rods to take off, and then you've got just the steering column. And you can't unbolt this one from underneath. You need to do it inside. Just crawl under the dash. It's a 16mm. 16mm, and then go ahead and drop this down. Show you guys the wiring harness on top, coming down. Got lube techs walking over here. They want to be in this video now. Yep, smile away. Yeah, not too bad. I got it done in about 16 hours, so beat the flat rate by 4 hours. Not bad at all. Make sure you top off all your fluids. You got to put coolant in it, oil, and then if you lost any tranny fluid, you need to top that off. As far as the wiring harness goes, there is not a whole lot to it, which is nice. Nothing on the passenger side of the motor. The only thing you really got to worry about, you got 1 MAF sensor that you'll need to disconnect up top, and then you have 1, 2, 3 connectors right here. 1, 2, and 3. These are big connectors, the ones I was showing you. And all you do to release them is there's a little tab right here on the corner. Right there, you just push that down, and that will release this. Flip it a whole 90 degrees, and then it will pop right off. So you got 1, 2, 3 here. You got a couple of little harness clips to kind of hold the harness away from your cooling hoses and anything else hot to keep it from melting. And then your positive terminal, you'll actually need to disassemble this. So once you remove it, you're not going to touch any of this. There are 2 clips down here. There's 1 on this side and there's 1 on the other. Once you have it removed and you have the battery pulled out, it's real easy to get to. You just disconnect that and then set it aside. And then the ones that you disconnected will, if I remember correctly, they stay with the vehicle. And then this comes up It just has 2 clips on the one side of it, and then there's 2 bolts underneath the battery. 1 and 2 that will release the entire, I want to say this is the TCM, but it could be the PCM. I'm not sure. I've never had to mess with them yet on the Jukes. Haven't had issues with them. And then once you have that pulled out, you're going to want to set it aside. I usually like to set the TCM or the PCM if I have to pull them both on the driver's seat once I remove them, just to keep dirt, water, and dust out, especially if it's over a weekend. We have our detailers actually come and scrub the shop for us, and I don't want them they blasting water and blowing dirt and dust everywhere, so I just assume it was inside. And then back down underneath the airbox, you'll need to remove the airbox as well. There is another one of those bolt connectors right there that needs to get disconnected, and then there is another one right, let's see if I get this camera to focus, right there. This one can be a little bit of a pain, but this is him right here. He just needs to get disconnected and pulled out. And once you have that off, that's the entire wiring harness. You'll pull the entire harness with the motor real quick and easy. And the only other thing you have to worry about is there's another ground that sits on the bottom of this box, and you'll see it when you pull that out. And then there's another ground right here going to the negative battery cable that runs down and bolts. You don't need to worry about, there's one bolt there on the frame. You don't need to worry about that. It's just the one on the side of the transmission. Let's see if I can focus on it. It's down there on the side of the trans. You get access through it through the driver's side wheel well. And then that's pretty much it for the harness and electrical. Everything else is all connected. There is the one connector on the AC compressor that you will need to disconnect it when you remove the compressor, but that's kind of self-explanatory. And then as far as verifying your tranny fluid, there's your dipstick right there, if I could get this light right there. And it's not too difficult. They're kind of a pain in the butt with the Nissans. They always have been. But all you need to do is just take a flathead screwdriver and stick it. There's a little window right there. And all you do is just push in on it, put good pressure. And if I had a second hand, and you just grab this with your other hand and pull straight up, and that will pop that free. Overly not too difficult. The other thing with these Nissans is these engine covers, is you want to start here at the front and then come over here to this side and pop that one. And then there's one back here on this corner. You got to be real careful with him. The center one right here, this one popped out for me real clean. But these engine covers love to break right here on this seam. So just be real careful pulling this up. I've broken a lot of them, and it's not such a big deal. I mean, it is just an engine cover, but the problem is that if you break it and then put it back on there, sometimes they can rattle and they can vibrate. These engines are notorious for noise, and you don't want a customer complaining that you broke their, or that there's now, ever since you worked on it, there's been this squeaking and this cracking and creaking noise. So just one of those things to watch out for on this motor. As far as everything else goes, though, I mean, everything else seemed to have went pretty clean. I drove this thing about 30 miles just to make sure that it was making the boost that it needed to. Everything seemed to be okay. The only thing that I had issues with when I went to put everything back together was this, the blow-off valve. It's the vacuum actuator. This little hose that sticks out here, a little plastic piece, was actually busted off. And there's a little metal insert inside of it. And so if it's busted and you can't see it and you install that, you can actually get a vacuum leak right here. So that's one of those things to watch for, and be careful with this. They are fragile, kind of like how you can break these purge valve elbows off really easy when you go to disconnect that. And you really don't even need to disconnect and remove this purge valve. Really just remove, once you get the engine dropped, you don't even need to mess with that. Pull the electrical connector, pull the harness off of it, pull your supply elbow from the turbo to the intercooler. He needs to come off of there. Yeah, overall not bad. A lot less of a headache than I thought it was going to be. Hope this helps you guys out. You need other videos of this, or need tips or help on it, feel free to leave a comment or send me a message. Have a good night, YouTube.